All right, it is new bike day, or new bike day yesterday. I don't normally do a review of a bike that's so new because I really like to put it through its paces over at least months, if not the better part of a year, to really get a sense of the bike. Because there's tons of people going out there demoing bikes, or the magazines will do a one-day ride on a bike. But I was finding, because I was shopping for this bike, I was finding very little on it. It's a new segment of bike. I mean, it's not like earth-shattering, but they kind of put the pieces together. So the bigger brands are starting to offer this bike that is, essentially it's a cross-country bike, full suspension, that has a little more travel, a little slacker head tube, and a dropper post. Everybody's kind of in that space, that 110 to maybe even up to 130 mil on some forks on this type of setup. The one I settled on after some shopping around is the Cannondale Scalpel SE. I have the SE2. It has a standard fork instead of Cannondale's Lefty, which is a big reason I went with this. There's a couple, I've given up a few things to get that fork versus the Lefty, which I love a Lefty. It's a fantastic fork. They're legendary. They do great. But when you're in a bind, you have a wheel go out, and you're at a race or an event or traveling, it's really hard to get a Lefty front wheel. This bike retails for $4,500, and it came with a standard fork. So it's boost front and rear. So it's really easy to get some wheels or borrow some wheels or whatever. Love the Lefty, but I just didn't have the headaches of it. You know, you basically need to make sure you have a backup wheel set with you to run the Lefty. Let's run through the Cannondale Scalpel SE2 and see how it's spec'd. I think they did a really good job for the price point. I think you really get into beyond $4,000. Really all you're getting is small details and some weight savings as you kind of go above that. I find 4K is the mark where you get into as good as anything out there bike for everyday use, but you're missing out on a few just kind of luxury pieces. If you don't go higher, you can go up to $8,000, but beyond that, you're saving some weight. And you're getting some bling. But this is a place where Cannondale is going to save a few bucks. You know, it's their own branded handlebar. These I put these ODI Rogue. It's their biggest circumference grip. Put the ODI Rogue on there. They're saving some money on the bar and stem. That's an easy replacement if I want to shave some weight. But in terms of just regular grind and everyday performance, these are fine. But I could shave some grams definitely if I went with some different bars. So that's where they're saving money above the higher spec bike. Obviously, it's not a top of the line brake, but for my needs in Texas and in some cross country racing plus playing on the bike, which is why I got this bike, because it's a cross country bike that I can play on. The SRAM Level 2, I'm happy with this bike. It was on my intense primer before, or this brake. This brake was on my intense primer previously, and I'm really happy with it. And as I move on down to where it sits here, front is running 180 mil rotor with that brake. Let's look at start at the tire. Front, you're running an Ardent, Maxxis Ardent. This is a 29er, obviously. It's a 2.4, so a little wider tire on the front. The rim is the Stans Arch, which is a 26 mil wide internal Stans rim. It really pushes the bead up and locks really well. So I think with these Stans rims, in my experience, I'm getting a lot less burp. And you're able to get a little bit more volume out of a given tire. Downside is if you run a narrower tire, like I may go down to a 2.2 Icon in the back, I'm a little worried that the sidewall might stick out too far from the treads, because this really sets the tire wide, which can leave it a bit vulnerable, but we'll see. But with these Ardents, these are great for playing, and it's not a bad tire. And in fact, a lot of times I race with an Ardent on the front and a Icon on the back. Where they did save some money, and their spot receiving some money savings, is just some, white label hubs. I think that's a cup and cone bearing going on in there. Nothing fancy. So there's a little bit of weight there to be saved. In fact, I like this rim so much, there's a good chance I just buy some different hubs and have these wheels built up with some fresh spokes, because there's some weight some weight to be saved there. The fork, it's the Fox, is a 34. So that's the width of the stanchion. Elite air float with the Fit 4 setup. So this is essentially internally and on the lowers, this is as good a fork really as Fox makes. To step up from here, you're really getting the Kashima coated uppers, and then maybe a little bit more control. I think it might be a separate high speed, low speed. But in terms of everyday performance, that's a great spec on this bike. So again, like I said, you get to $4,000, you get some good spec, and this is where your money's going, into that fork. And again, in the rear shock, the float, this is the Evil. With this bike, I'm getting 115 millimeters of travel in the back and 120 in the front. This is fantastic for play. A lot of bikes that are hitting this segment, which is a cross-country bike you can play on, are usually 120 is the mark. As I get a little older, again, I'm 40 now, I'm okay with a little less travel on the back. I'm not hucking this thing off. Today I took it off some of the bigger drops that I ride on the trail by my house here. And it's really as big drops as I go, and I didn't bottom out. I run the rear pretty stiff as it is. It's worth noting, this is nice. This is a carbon, the pivot right here, carbon, so it's saving some weight right there versus alloy. On some lower spec bikes, they're gonna have those linkages be alloy. They are saving a little money on the crank. This is the stylo, it's alloy. So it's like a cast alloy. So it could be a little bit lighter here. I may upgrade this crank set in the near future. This came spec'd with a 32 tooth front ring. That's probably going to be a quick change for me. I think I'm going to bump that up to 34 right away. And with the Eagle setup, I have a 1050 in the back. So pretty low gear. I feel like in some of the cross-country situations here, if you're on some of the longer rolling downhills, I could get spun out. I don't know offhand my cadence numbers and speed, but I feel like last time I rode this setup on the primer before I bumped that up to a 34, I was spinning out at like 22 miles an hour maybe. Eagle rear back, it's the lower end Eagle, which is fine for me when it comes to derailleurs especially. I'm not a big fan of having a $400 derailleur on the back of my mountain bike because I'm going to wreck that thing. The shifting is fine. It does great. If you have run Eagle before, it can be, I don't want to say like finicky, but getting it fine-tuned and getting it dialed, because the tolerances are so much tighter than a 10 or an 11 speed. You just got to take care of it, keep it clean. I've ridden this enough now where the cables and the housing are settling in, and I've had to make a few adjustments to the shifting. I'd say over the next couple rides, those will settle in where they're going to stay, and that shifting should lock in pretty well. It's got the race face effect, whatever you want to call it, dropper post. There's better dropper posts out there, but this one's fairly light. I like the weight savings I'm getting out of cable actuation versus hydraulic. And I've got it adjusted where I need it right now, so it's pretty solid. I think as I've tweaked that seat post, I've been able to do 10 or 15 millimeters up and down on that seat post without messing it up. As you know, with cable actuated dropper posts, the run of the cable housing and cable to the bottom of the dropper post does affect the tightness of it and how it works. So you have to be careful when you're putting your saddle up and down. You may need to totally reset the cable and housing. It comes with a fabric, I don't even know what model this is, saddle. It's fine so far. I got a few rides on it. I haven't done anything long yet. Alloy rails, nothing spectacular. I'm not too picky about my saddles on my mountain bikes as I am on a road bike for obvious reasons. I mean, you're just not sitting on that thing grinding out as much as you are on a road bike. But one thing, I don't know if this was the clincher as to why I bought this bike, but it factored. I don't like to wear a camelback if I don't have to. It can get kind of hot in Texas. So there's a price to be paid for wearing stuff. I prefer a fanny pack. Check a review of the fanny pack I'm wearing right now. But a big issue here is that I'm liking is there's a second set of bottle bosses. I haven't put it on there yet. I don't know how often I'll keep it on there because it's really, that would be a race day thing. Might need a side loader there, and I don't think, just eyeball it there, I don't think the 750 Camelback bottle is going to fit there. I could put it, but I do fit a 750 here. I have to put a 500 milliliter bottle there. Bike comes with the Maxxis Ardent tires, 2.4 on the front and a 2.25 on the back. It's a great all-around tire. It's Maxxis' all-around tire, comparable to say a Kenda, probably Nevigal, which is their all-around tire, maybe a little lower tread than that, kind of a between the Nevigal and maybe a Slant 6. But I'll probably swap the rear tire out for an Icon, which is a little faster tire. But where I ride here in Texas, I like the Ardent on the front. That's actually my tire of choice for the front. Not necessarily that width. I might switch it and might pull that tire off, put the 2.25 on the front, and put an Icon on the back for speed. That same, I think a 2.2 is the width that comes in. Of course, gum walls. Gum walls are nice.